Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to your post-match Raw on AI Pro. Podcasting to you from my field here in beautiful rural Ireland. I'm Trev Downey, and joining me to give their immediate reactions to Liverpool 2, Watford 0 in the Premier League, and can I just say heroically so, as we are all as sick as a small hospital, the three of us. The game came from Anfield, and I'm joined by Jim Boardman and Hari Sethi. Jim, you know, there's a lot of talk there on BT Sport, which is where I watch it afterwards, about the comparative ugliness of the win and the comparative poverty of the performance and the comparative importance of the points. And it's the kind of cliched stuff you'd expect to come from that channel. But I have to feel overall that perhaps it wasn't quite as bad as it was being spun, and perhaps Watford weren't quite as excellent as was being spun. But we've come to expect this, haven't we, Jim? The narrative's always different around Liverpool.
It is. It's always Liverpool's fault when something isn't quite what they want. And, you know, you've got Liverpool playing against we've had a lot of managers down the years, and Roy Hodgson was one of them. And I think if you were saying what was the most entertaining football you ever saw as a Liverpool fan, you wouldn't probably mention any of his games. And I think if you're a fan of any club, you're probably thinking the same, apart from, you know, when you're a fan of a lower league club or a club down at the bottom that wins against the big boys now and again by winning ugly and stuff. But, I mean, the trouble is that isn't the great kind of football to watch. And I think the fact that there was any entertainment at all is as down to Liverpool as much as down to Watford. To be fair to them, it's not as bad a game of football from them as I thought it could have been, you know, from Roy. But that's because he's not had a chance to put his own stamp on things yet. The truth is, we've just come back of an international break. We've won again, and we did enough to win. And I think I said it last time we played, and I probably said it a few times. There's a thing about Liverpool, which at times we just do enough to win, and you don't need to do more. It's kind of, you know, we're being economical with our skills, with our strength, with our resources, whatever you want to call it. We're doing enough, you know, and if you need to go into fourth gear to win, we'll go into fourth gear. But if second gear is enough, we'll do it in second gear. And I think that's the way. You know, that's the way that you win leagues. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love us to win 6-0 every week, but I wouldn't want us to win 6-0 3 out of 4 times and lose the other one and not win the league. So I'm happy enough with this. And yeah, BT don't like us at all.
It's remarkable, and they leaned into it with their post-match interview with Roy Hodgson, which I just watched. I have to mention it because it may not have an opportunity otherwise, and I told you both before we went live that I would mention it to you. So I'm sitting there watching the whole owl face be quizzed up by whatever the touchline monkey is there. It's probably Des. What's his name? I didn't pay attention to whether it was Des Kelly or whatever. But this is stunning. So he's asked what he thinks, and he says, you know, it's pretty decent performance, but he's a bit disappointed about one thing. What Roy is disappointed about is the VAR awarding of a penalty in the 88th minute, because according to Roy, neither him nor Jürgen were aware of what it was that they were checking. And VAR that's not what VAR is for, says Roy, to award a penalty to a team that's 1-0 up in the 88th minute and kill the game as a spectacle. Now, I'm really struggling. So old broadsheet boy is composing narratives for his national newspaper column here in his head, thinking, you know, in the good old days, we didn't have grand narratives destroyed by interfering pesky technology. That's not what technology is for. Technology is there to keep me in the game I'm struggling to understand how a supposedly very we can slag him off, Jim, but he's supposed to be a very intelligent man. End of story. That's where all this broadsheet shit comes from, because he reads a book. Wow. But he's supposed to be a bright man. How can you be a bright man and come up with that? I'm sorry, it's completely silly talk. It makes no sense.
It makes no sense, and it's Roy Hodgson all over, isn't it? He's good. I mean, the media love him because he'll always say something, and the chances are that what he says will give them something they can put a headline to. There'll be some soundbite from him that you can stick a headline to, and he might be a fan of the broadsheets where the headlines are a little bit less punny, but that's still what he likes to see, isn't it? Or what they like to see. They like people like him. I genuinely don't know how he can say that. I don't get the logic in that. If he's saying that it's only VAR if the managers complain. Well, that was one version of VAR that was touted years ago, was to give managers the right to kind of put a timeout on, or something like you get in other sports. The manager can say, whoa, hang on, that wasn't right. Can we have another look? That's not how it works. It works now that one of the untouchable, perfect referees in the whole football system sits in the studio and decides whether it was a bad thing or not. As it was, they got it right in this case. But the truth is, 88 minutes into a game, how can the game be ruined as a spectacle? I mean, have we just sort of, production lines up and down the country have just been slammed the brakes on for the DVDs they were going to throw out on Monday of this spectacle just because of that? It's Roy Hodgson, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love him in a way.
Apparently, the cast of Hamilton are absolutely gutted because they were getting ready to do their interpretation of fucking Liverpool versus Watford. Unbelievable, Jim. And Harry, I mean, like, this is the thing about it. It's in the context of that I come to get your initial take as well, because he's a wonderful lad, isn't he? For literally coming out with outrageously idiotic things at times. And just to kind of lean into this idea that was the narrative that was being put forward, that was a particularly ugly performance. I stayed well away from Twitter because I was very busy following the details of the match, which there seemed to be many of, and lots of them positives in terms of the Liverpool play. Some not as many as usual chance created, but some nice football. I don't think it was quite as awful as a lot were saying. And sometimes we have to just maybe put our big boy pants on and allow that we're going to have to ride out a 1-0 win on occasion.
Yeah, no, I think as Jim was saying, it's the sort of stuff that we got quite comfortable with in the season where we won the title. I think it took us a while to get adjusted to. I think when sort of Virgil first arrived, Ali first sort of settled in as well alongside Fab, and then we'd start to see these games where, of course, if everything's working perfectly fine, you might get some of that heavy metal football that I think that the likes of BT and those lot are still quite hung up on, in terms of sort of that's what Liverpool should be offering you. For example, they've loved those games this season where we've been involved in really great games, but we had very little control over those games. And so, the Chelsea 2-2, the Tottenham 2-2, for example, like some of those games where great for a neutral, I imagine, but you're just not going to win anything by playing that way. But of course, great for TV. But these kind of wins, the ones that Virgil, Ali, and Fab just sort of got us more comfortable with after they joined and had settled in for a while. Yeah, it's the bread and butter of how you win league titles, especially at this time of the season. We've got not many games left to go, a packed schedule. We all know how big this month's going to be. I was just listening to you speaking to Jan Molby about it, Trev, and it's not necessarily about glittering performances here. I mean, it's a completely different game, but I often think about how people who support other clubs will, every now and then they'll just mention how terrible that Liverpool-Tottenham Champions League final was. And I just always bring it back to, I just don't really care about that, in terms of what you thought of the overall performance or the spectacle. I mean, we gave you the 4-4, we gave you the 4-0, sorry, rather, in the previous game. That should have been enough for you. It's all about winning once you get to those stages, and this is the stage of the season we find ourselves in. It's a slightly weird thing. I thought Watford were well organised, and you can sort of see maybe if they hired Hodgson 2 months earlier, maybe they would be in with a better chance of surviving than they are at the moment. I think it's a little bit too late for them, unfortunately. You could also see as well, they've got like a really talented bunch of attackers there that they could maybe build around as well if they're going to stay. Maybe some of them will leave at the end of the season, but I didn't think they were anywhere near as dangerous as was being made out, and we were given another example of that we've spoken about in the past, Trev, where it seems to be like 20 to 25 minutes is dedicated to talking about a chance that was actually offside, and we just talk about it over and over and over again about how he missed the target. It went off. It was a great chance, but it was offside, so it wasn't really a chance. And it's not like Liverpool, it was offside by accident. We play to catch players offside, so it was slightly weird in that sense. But yeah, you get to the end of the game and you're thinking, 14-point deficit we've turned around, 10 league wins on the spin, 13 clean sheets in the last 18, and we're top of the league. And so really my focus now is on Big Sean Dyche, and what he can accomplish this afternoon, Trev.
We are all Sean Dyche for this afternoon. I'm listening to you there rattle off those stats, and I'm just thinking, yeah, dull, mate. Dull as dishwater, this Liverpool team. I mean, it's
I'm sorry if you're not entertained. Yeah,
yeah, sorry, lads. I look forward to chatting to you a little bit about some of those Watford attackers in a minute, because I'm going to come back to do exactly that with yourself, to chat about the Watford team and lineup. Having listened to you on Rival Recon, Jim, you and I might take a look at the Reds lineup this afternoon. It was always going to have one or two people raising one or two eyebrows, because that's just what has to happen between now and the end of the season, especially on the first weekend post international fortnight, when everybody's been traveling. So we'll just take a look, you and I, at the Reds lineup that Jürgen Klopp went with. And the back four was, I think, as predictable as you might have thought. I having gone through it on two different shows and tried to canvass opinion from everyone on them, I kind of talked myself around to the fact that there really was no choice but Joe Gomez, and I'm delighted that was the choice, because he had a super outing today, I thought, in many ways. Joel and Virgil and Robbo, the far side, along with Ali, make up our defence. Curtis Jones was selected alongside Jordan Henderson and Thiago, and he went with the front three of Mo, Bobby and Diogo Jota, with a very powerful looking bench, including Fabinho, who, if we're being honest, was required as the game went on. Ibu Kanate is there, Jimmy Milner, Sadio Mane back from his exploits, as opposed to poor old Mo, who's back from his, but with less of an upbeat frame of mind. Oxlade-Chamberlain's on the bench, as is Tsimikas. Diaz, who had his own disappointments in the international setup. Caoimhín Kelleher, who played for Ireland during the week. And Trent sitting there looking ominous for all future opponents on our bench. So, I mean, I get a buzz, Jim, these days out of talking about the Liverpool lineup in a way that I haven't really since we started this show, because the bench is always so powerful looking. There are always so many options now. It's great. It's really, really enlivening, and it's invigorating. In terms of that selection, I think the defence looks after itself. There's probably not a whole lot to be said about that. But the choice of the trio that he went with, do you reckon Curtis was selected on the back of a reasonably impressive outing for the England under-21s, and given the fact that Fab had to travel, or what do you think was the thinking around that? And then the trio up top as well. We know that Luis Diaz had a good outing in that he scored away on that international break, but came home probably in poor spirits. Sadio Mane, by the opposite token, had another happy trip away, but he went with Mo. What do you think were the thinkings of Jürgen around about the various selections?
I think it's a mixture of things. I think one of the things, although we do go on about playing one game at a time, when you've got a schedule like Liverpool's, you can't just be totally blinkered and just think of one game at a time. You've got to think what's coming up, and of course what's just gone. So the players that have had to travel, the players that have had to play more than others in midweek, are going to be maybe not quite as sharp and not quite as ready to play as others. But then I think the overall thing you've got now is that you're not having to force anyone. Would Mane have started despite what's gone on in the week? Yeah, if we didn't have Jota and Firmino available, I think he probably would have done. Would we have forced Trent into action if we didn't have Gomez? Maybe. Although, can you imagine the face of the England gammons when they found out that we played Trent after saying he was injured for their matches? I would have enjoyed that. I mean, I thought he'd come on today, But as you say, Gomez played so well that it didn't feel like we missed Trent. And I think something with Gomez is that I think there's times when you wonder, is he a centre back? Is he a full back? And and he can do both jobs, or is he great at either? And I think today he showed that he can be great at full back, because let's face it, that first goal, that cross for that first goal was something Trent would have been proud of, something Robbo would have been proud of, something that that underlines how much of a good all round player he is. And I know sometimes you think, does someone like Joe need to play more games? And he may be the same with Curtis Jones as well. Will he need to play more games? But the truth is, if you're playing for Liverpool, then maybe you don't play every game. But when you do play, it's still a big thing that you're doing. It's still noticeable what you're doing. If you're more bothered about an international career, then maybe you don't want to be a fringe player at Liverpool, because maybe you won't get games. Personally, I don't think anyone would pick. Maybe I'm biased because of my lack of patriotism, but I don't think anyone would pick an international career over a career as part of what Liverpool are at the moment and what they're doing. So, yeah, Jones, I think he didn't have his best game today, and he does that sometimes. I think he's still young, he's still learning, and the more we can give him these chances, the more we can give him the chance to make mistakes that he'll learn from, the more he'll learn, the better a player he'll become. There is a really good player in there.
Yeah, let me jump in. Let me jump in there, Jim, because people will be listening to that, and it's a bone of contention, because you know what online fandom is. It's totally different to the experience that you and I have going back before there was any such interactivity possible. It's just a different thing, and it's very immediate. So no doubt there will be all sorts of outrageous takes on Curtis Jones. So I wouldn't mind just getting a take from you as a man who's watched quite a few generations of Liverpool teams now. Do you sound quite certain about that? You do believe that there is, as you say, a player there, that there is a career to be had for Curtis Jones in this Liverpool midfield going forward?
It's definitely there for him. I mean, what he's got to remember is that he's not just going to get that place automatically. He doesn't get a nod just because he's got more Scouse blood in him than his rivals. There's just like he wouldn't have been behind in the pecking order just because his name wasn't continental sounding, which has been a criticism that's been aimed at managers in the past at Anfield. He's a local lad. He wants to do well for the club. There's an argument sometimes that maybe being a Red, being a lifelong Red, being local, that it gets to his head a bit more than it would to others. Even Steven Gerrard has had that accusation levelled against him at times that, his sort of, say in a derby match or in a game against the Manx, that there's more, it means more to him than it does to the others, to the extent that it kind of takes him too far over an edge that maybe he shouldn't go. I'm not saying that's the case with Jones, but it does play on his mind. I think there is a player in there. That's not to say he'll make it, because it's down to him to put the work in, take the chances when he gets them, listen to what the boss tells him, listen to what the other coaches tell him, put things in practice in training. But yeah, there's definitely a player there. I mean, his chance that he had today that went over, he's not the only one, He's not Fab. He's not Fabinho. He's not yet Henderson. But let's face how much have we slagged off Henderson, or how much of Liverpool fans, if you like, slagged off Henderson over the past few years. There's still a player there that can be good. His biggest threat, in my opinion, might be that we go out and buy someone better. But I still think he's good enough to save us having to do that and allow us to spend the money in some other way. But of course, nobody's perfect, but he's still young. There's still time for him to come into it. And I honestly think even if he doesn't make it at the Reds, that it'll be because eventually the time comes when we say, right, you're not quite up to the standard, because we've got such quality around you, such quality in your way, and maybe he moves on to another club. But I still think there's a Premier League player in there, even if it ultimately doesn't end up being as a Liverpool player.
Brilliant. Delighted to hear that. I just wanted to tease it out a bit, because it is one of those questions that will be going around in folks' heads. And that's kind of what we're here to do, I guess, is help them out a little bit with that and get their thoughts going, even if it is just to disagree with us. And to have a look at Watford with you, Harry, they go with Ben Foster, who I've done a bit of research into since yourself and Dave put me wise to his online presence. Yeah. He certainly seems an interesting lad. They went with Femenia, Kabasele, Samir, and Kamara, Sissoko, Luza, Kuka, Sarr, Jed Pedro, and Hernandez. On their bench, it's perhaps not quite as strong as the Liverpool bench, to say the least. They have Ngakia, they had Josh King, Tom Cleverley's on there, Messina and Sema and Cathcart, Dennis, Bachmann and Kayembe. Now, the way I want to drive this with you is, first of all, do you think as strong as they can go currently? Is there anybody missing from that lineup that that your contributor was convinced would start, and if so, why? And is there anybody else that's out of the loop currently, injury wise or illness wise, that people aren't perhaps thinking about there, that they could have gone with stronger? Because as we look at the table, and that's what it's all about at this stage, Harry, they're looking more and more adrift. It's going to be tough for them to get out of where they are. You mentioned earlier on, if the appointment of old Broadsheet boy had been a little bit earlier, perhaps he could have worked his incredible 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss ratio and gotten them to somewhere just north of that danger zone. But as it is now, 30 games played, 22 points, and the team ahead of them, Burnley, have 2 games less played, same points. They look adrift, man. So talk to me a little bit around about whether they're operating at their peak, at their best, what it is Roy's trying to do there, if he's made any big changes, that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's mostly around shape, and I guess you could expect that coming away to a place like Anfield and sort of being aware of what they had to defend against, sort of a 4-1, 4-1, if you will, or at least sort of out of possession, and very disciplined, very, very compact, as we're sort of used to expecting with a Hodgson team. We've heard about the string on the training ground, all the drills that he gets those teams to do, and of course, yeah, it's definitely, it's on the more. It's not heavy metal football. I'm not sure. It's probably sort of, I don't know, BBC Radio 2 Sunday afternoon type music in terms of sort of just getting you through. And you mentioned the points there, and we make light of it. And obviously we've had our run in with Hodgson in the past, but I think realistically for a team like Watford, the thing that came out of that podcast with Adam, who was on to give the Watford perspective, was just that they've suffered from a lack of consistency really around. They've gone through 3 managers this season, and over the past however many seasons, they've gone through a high number of managers. A lot of the players there have played under all these different coaches, and a firm style of play has not really been ingrained in them. They've veered very sharply from managers who want to play high intensity pressing football to Hodgson now, which is sort of diametrically opposite to that as well. But there are some promising attacking players in there. That's probably the strongest part of their team, to be honest. I think you look at their midfield and their defence, and that's you look at it and you consider it championship level, to be honest. But I think there are some attackers in there who have shown on a couple of times this season, even if they come out losing the game, that they've got something to offer actually. So Ismail Assar we're aware of. From sort of his previous encounters with us, did very well last season in the Championship. Obviously, good friends with Sadio Mane as well. There's Pedro, who's been pretty handy at times this season. Cucho Hernandez, who's been better of late than he was at the start of the season, and then Emmanuel Dennis as well, who's on the bench. That's probably the one surprise that he wasn't in the starting lineup, but he gives them a good option, I suppose, off the bench. But you look at their last game where they won against Southampton away from home. Cucho Hernandez scored 2 goals in that game, but they lined up differently. I think it was a 4-3-3 with Dennis, Pedro, and Hernandez up top, and they do combine very well at times when they're counter-attacking. You could see it at times today that they are pretty handy in terms of quick combinations. They're fast. They seem to have a good understanding between them. And against a side that was less sort of formidable defensively, I think you could see them causing teams trouble. And of course, they are the ones who saw off Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the end at Manchester United with that performance. I think it was 4-1, wasn't it, earlier in the season? So they do have something about them. I just think that the foundations have been they've been flawed throughout the entire season, and they've just not been able to keep the goals out. So I think at this stage, especially because Burnley are winning this afternoon as well, so it's going to be tough for them. As much as I would like our friend Frank over at Everton to do them a favour.
Yeah, we are no longer all Sean Dyche. What is 5 minutes, Harry? I believe.
What? Oh, God. I wasn't aware.
5 minutes. 5 minutes is all it took for City to get ahead against Burnley. Apparently, this is just coming in as we're recording here now, and
the comeback will be all the more sweet, Trev. That's the thing.
Go on, old gravelly worm voice. Let's go. That's all we want. Anything like that would be great. But to be honest, probably the most likely thing now, if they're 1-0 up, is that that goal difference advantage possibly could be less of a factor at the end of it. So let's be realistic too. If we go on and get into the details of this game, more of the narratives will pop out as we go. Look, it's very tempting. It always is to spend a lot of time chatting about Stuart Atwell because he's not the greatest, is he? And there's a very interesting thing that we're going to have to talk about in relation to Stuart Atwell later on. So let's save it for that, because when he does blow the whistle to get the game going, Jim, in the first half, we have a sort of a tokenistic effort after only a minute with a Mo Salah half volley after a Robbo corner eventually kind of broke his way. We're trying to put them under pressure from the start. It looked like I got a great kick out of Joel Matip having one of his little tantrums with the captain, who let's be honest, look, Jordan's a great lad, but one thing he's very, very good at doing is telling everybody else what they should have done. Immediately after something's happened, Jordan will always have an opinion about why you fucked up and you should have done something different, and he'll be very loud about it. So to see Joel handing him his arse on a plate because Hendo was quite panicked in possession, and instead of just simply playing the way he was facing or whatever, he just looked frazzled, and Joel wasn't having it. 5 minutes, there was a Samir ball over the top. Sarr half volleyed over from outside the box. Now, in past matches, we've seen that type of effort go in. People of my vintage will remember the likes of perhaps going right back to Graham Sharp, scoring a goal from a similar place, and it will have pained you as well, Jim, that one, back in the day. So I mean, it is a chance after a fashion, but what it did do was it gave old Stevie McManaman a chance to go on ad nauseum about Liverpool's high line and how it's a really dangerous ploy. God bless him. 7 minutes.
I found it just quickly. I found a way to deal with Steve McManaman better.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I've worked it out today that he's actually broadcasting for CBeebies, and when you listen to him, it does sound like he's trying to talk to a 3 or 4-year-old and explain things to them. And if you get that in your head, I got through 90 minutes much easier today with that.
Any of the 3-year-olds I know, if someone just kept saying yep, I think they might get a little bit impatient as well. Just to take it forward to the next Stevie McManaman minute, we'll break there. On 7, there is a gorgeous Thiago pass, and he did pull out quite a few of them over the course of the game. Little Fletcher on the commentary duties was getting very excited with the no-look passing, kept talking about it, and it was good. He was pinging balls around, got man of the match from McManaman at the end, regardless of what you think of that call, did Thiago. And Curtis hit one well over from about 7 minutes out. And like I said, at this point, all old McManaman can chat about is the vulnerable high line, and this is what he says, and how blind balls like this one, as a defender pings a perfect diag across into the path of a winger, he calls it a blind ball. And I'm thinking, right, we're in trouble here, because I don't even know where to approach this lack of logic. But anyway, we managed to clear the danger, and I want to just finish with this final mention of Steve McManaman. And by the way, people get into the comments occasionally to say, we didn't have that commentary. Okay, but I'm like, the reason we bring this stuff up is because it's partially amusing. So it's not like the whole nature of the show. So do bear with us, but the last thing that I have to mention about Steve McManaman is around about this point, around about the 10-minute mark, Fletcher starts going on about the long spell away from Premier League football and how great it is to be back. And he's going, oh, yeah, he says, I had loads of lads coming up to me asking, when's it over? When's this international break over? And I'm thinking, no, Steve, you didn't. Nobody does that, because everyone has this thing called the internet and phones and fixture lists. Nobody asked you, Steve, to put them in the know about when the fucking international break was over, because it's called International Fortnight, Steve, so they can all guess. I mean, I don't even know where to start, Jim. Talk to me a little bit about that opening, and if you saw any pattern develop that sort of took hold for the match, and anything else you want to mention.
Yeah, I think what Matt Manning was trying to say is there was a time when people used to ring him up and ask if he had any semi-final tickets for them, but they've given up now because he never has. So this is what it's got down to now. They're asking if there's an international break and how long it's on for. I think we kicked off in a kind of way I sort of half expected, because I think there's sometimes a sort of expectation that builds, and it builds more in an international break because there's nothing to kind of slow it down in a way. And I'm sure people were going into this game today thinking that it was going to be an absolute masterclass from Liverpool. We'd be 5-0 up within 5 minutes, but that doesn't always happen. We were a little bit, I'm not saying rusty, but we as a game, I mean, you can think it's rusty, you can think it's just taking it slowly. We were just getting into the game. We were just finding our way into it, and maybe we didn't do it in the first 5 minutes, but we did it. We did enough. They did have a chance, as you say, the half volley that could have easily gone in maybe on another day. But on the other hand, who's in the goal for us? Just keeping an eye on it. And we've said it before. You can never underestimate the difference he makes. Not just when he makes saves and the times he puts players off. The times he's such an imposing presence that any players not any sort of doubt in a player's mind as they take a shot, there's going to be a little bit more added by seeing him in front of them as the target they've got to get past. So I think we did enough. I think we played well. I think that Curtis shot that I mentioned earlier on happened around in this spell, and it was just one of those. I mean, that it does frustrate me at times when I see Liverpool players, in fact players for any club, just take a shot like that from distance. But sometimes they come off, and I'm sure there'll be someone shouting at them, probably Henderson behind him, telling him not to do that again. Even though Henderson's one of those who's guilty of doing that kind of thing. Yeah, it does work sometimes, and I think any player, it just shows the hunger of players in a lot of ways. You want to be the one that scores the goal. You want to get things going. But, again, mistakes being learned from, that's one to learn from. Just think a little bit more next time. What would you do with the ball? It's not worth ending a player's career because of that one situation. But I feel like a lot of the criticism that Curtis will get today will be because of that wasted effort. And if we'd have lost today or not won today, it would have all been because of that one shot, which is pathetic if anyone genuinely did think that much. I think in this opening spell we'd done enough. We'd done enough. We hadn't got ahead yet, but we'd started to just take control, and possession was all ours now. And I think it was quite clear by this point. You could tell that the way Hodgson was setting out was defend, and the counter attack if you can. And it was good to hear the familiar cry from Hodgson being at Anfield when a corner's taken, and that familiar cry from the side defending it of away, like in some kind of mad panic. Far too close to our goal, get it away, hoof. They didn't quite say hoof, but you're waiting for it. So, yeah. That was what the pattern was to me by that point. They were going to maybe hope for a bit of a chance, hope for something against the run of play or whatever. But, we were going to stand firm. And although I wouldn't be arrogant enough to say I thought that at that time, that was definitely going to be the way it turned out. I could feel it could easily be. And in the end, it did, I think.
Yeah, it did have that feel to it. I have to say, and it's not about... The reason I phrased the question that way is I did feel that was the shape of the game. Sometimes you can get a sense of how things are going to go. And Harry, just to take the run up to the goal with you, and I'll actually go out the far end to the end of the first half with you as well, because if we're being honest, there's not a huge amount of incident that follows. There is on 12 minutes a Hernandez header. It's kind of at Ali. From a corner kick. And it's a decent opportunity for sure. But 4 minutes later in 16, there's a very wild Diogo Jota effort at a lob from distance. You can see what he's trying to do. I've tried it often enough myself in various games where you try. It's about cutting the ball with a bit of topspin, almost like it's like a table tennis shot or a tennis shot of some sort. He didn't quite execute it well, and it looked kind of wildly over. 21 minutes.
I was going to say, Trev, actually, yeah, it reminded me of an effort I've tried before as well. Actually, a moment we could all sort of sympathise with.
Yeah, we've all been that guy where everybody looking at you going, seriously.
You're usually in a cage or in a field, and it goes miles out, and you have to run and get it. So.
You see, but in your head, it's absolutely on, Harry. It's fucking on. So after that wild Jota lob, we saw a beautiful example of what in the 1960s would have been called Joel vision. Beautiful pass out to the flank to Thiago in 17 minutes. 21 minutes, they do have a counter-attack. João Pedro gets Kuka in on the left. Ali has his angles perfect, advances, makes one of those saves that we come to absolutely take for granted with Ali, which we shouldn't. It's brilliant by him, and exactly why we have him in the team, and then exactly why he's so good. And within seconds, I think it's 30-something seconds, we've gone up the far end and it's 1-0. And the way that the move ends is with the perfect Big Joe Gomez cross. It's a gorgeous shape on it, exactly like you would think Trent might put on the best of his crosses. Beautiful arc, beautiful shape on it coming in. Later on, I saw a lovely interview with both Joe and Diogo Jota, who's I shouldn't really require saying at this stage, but he's incredibly articulate. Man, is Diogo. He's got fantastic English, but he was talking about how him and Joe had been having a chat beforehand, and how he hadn't really known what to expect the last time Joe was coming in terms of his crosses, but they'd done a little bit of work on it, and he had told Joe that he was going to be at least one assist to the good today, and so it happened. It was a beautiful execution of the header by Jota himself. It's his 20th of the season, which requires pausing and over the head, congratulating, clapping about. So we'll just hold it there, and then you and I'll see the first half out together. Anything about what I've mentioned that you want to focus on? Feel free, or if you just want to talk about the goal, do that.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a fairly uneventful sort of first opening, sort of 20-25 minutes. I mean, apart from the goal, anyway. I mean, their chance was pretty well constructed. Ali does what he usually does in terms of sort of smothering it. I can't remember exactly when it was as well, and it's not like there's a huge amount to focus on with it, but there was somewhere in between that time as well. There was this like ridiculously gorgeous pass from Thiago as well that I think Curtis blasted over afterwards. But that was probably the perfect example of one of those no-look passes that you can do where he fizzed it into Curtis and took out about 4 or 5 players in it anyway. Sure, Hodgson enjoyed that, considering how well set up they were and how sort of that pass just cut straight through them. But the goal itself, yeah, I mean, there was a great tweet on it by the Grace on Football, who she does some great writing about football across all the leagues. But she'd mentioned that Jota is the most 90s striker in the Premier League since the actual 90s, and you're just thinking about sort of his all-round game, and he does a lot of the pressing that Firmino used to do for us, sort of at his best, but effectively he's just a fox in the box poacher, and it's crazy how you can just have these games where he's barely in them really. Maybe his touch looks like it's a little bit off, even the link-up plays maybe not at its best either, and then he just pops up and he just comes to life in the box when he sniffs there's a chance to be had. And for somebody so small, as we've seen in the past, his ability in the air, and we even saw it for Portugal, I think, during this break, just how effective he is with his head. And yeah, it's a beautiful cross by Gomez, as you were saying. He sort of manifested it. They've been speaking together about that, and yeah, lovely little glancing header. And I suppose if you are in Hodgson's camp, you would be very upset by how simple that goal looks, but I think it's just a good example of good delivery, and then a striker who is just capable of turning those chances into gold really for us. And it's 14 goals in the league this season. I think that makes him the second highest goal scorer in the league at the moment. So we've got the top 2 with Mo and him as well. So yeah, it's sometimes goes under the radar. I think it's good he's got his own song now, and he feels very much a part of this team as well, given how he sort of displaced Bobby at this stage in certain games. But yeah, it's just remarkable. I think we've spent time thinking about how we're going to replace Firmino, because he does all these things that are so unique to our system and make us tick, and then we more or less have sort of switched him out of the side now for quite a while with Diego, who is just, or Diogo rather, who is just a poacher. Really, it presses like mad, but is a poacher, and it's worked a treat.
Yeah, and when you think of a lineup that probably has Diaz in it as well, or Sadio is most inventive, or Mo back on top, you start to feel the pinch less about the absence of Bobby. But I thought he had a good game today, did actually Firmino, and to take the first half to its conclusion, you talked about remarkably little incident. There's even less after the goal. I mean, there's still half of the half to go, and really all that happens is there was a lovely move in 29 minutes, which ended with another fantastic Thiago ball in. This time Sissoko got there with a really well-timed slide tackle just ahead of Robbo, who was bearing down and goal. That led to a corner, and from that, Joel was penalised for, as far as I can see, no reason for going for a header with Hernandez, and there was a clash of heads. I think that's why the free out was given. And from then on, we got to see headband Joel, which is, a little bonus. It's always enjoyable. It's not quite headband Millie, but we'll take it. 37 minutes, then there was another Jota effort, this time saved at the left-hand post. And Joe Gomez picks up a yellow on 45 as they broke. And he's a bit far up the field to be bothering, to be fair. But anyway, requires very little conversation because it didn't have an impact in the game going forward, I don't think. That's what I mean when I say very little incident, Harry. And just maybe to reflect on the half as a whole then, just in summary, when you look at the match stats, it's probably more in the second half we start racking these up, because I'm just looking at those match stats and, it looks like a typical Liverpool performance. 20 shots. Now, only 3 on target, granted. 74% of the ball, 707 passes there, 259, 84% of those accurate. That type of thing is very, very typical of the way that we play. And the type of overall match figures that we get. I have no concept of what the XG is because I don't have somewhere open there that I can read that. But, maybe that's more a reflection of the second half and what we started to do a little bit better in terms of maintaining control of the game. Because it was actually a little bit underwhelming that we didn't go on to maybe assert our authority a bit more, having gone ahead.
Yeah, I just think it looked like what it was, right? It's an early kickoff with players on our side. Let's face it, they're all internationals, and they've come back having played games where there were lots of stakes on the games in which they were playing. Some got the outcome they wanted, some didn't. You got Mo coming back. I wasn't too surprised that Mo had such a subdued game, to be honest, given another joyous extra time and penalties that he had to go through against Senegal, and sort of the way in which that game ended up playing out for him as well. So I wasn't too surprised that his touch was off, and of course he's just, with Ramadan starting as well. I'm guessing both him and Mane and a couple others are in the process of fasting as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if that takes him a little bit of time to balance that out as well. And Watford don't have that problem, right? The players on their side are not coming back from international break necessarily. So, it wasn't too much of a surprise to me, honest, Trev.
No, to be fair as well, it's hard to not be aware, just in case people hear occasionally that or there's a keyboard tapping or whatever. It's hard not to be aware of what's going on. We're trying to not pretend as if it doesn't matter and assume that City are going to just win 5-0 against Burnley. But my attention is drawn away. I'm going back to look at Watford and their comparative fight or lack of fight, and Burnley still have 2 games in hand over them, and could, if they were to win both of them, get themselves into a situation where they are out of bother. So if you can hear me, Sean Dyche, get your finger out of wherever it's lodged. This is ridiculous. Going on to the second half, Jim, with yourself, where, like I say, there's certainly more incident to talk about. We begin on the 45-minute mark with another beautifully shaped Joe Gomez cross into the box. Cabaselli got there ahead of Robbo on this occasion. With a good clearing header and went out for a corner from which we get nothing. Curtis had another one of his shots from distance on 47. That was well over 2. 51, Jota shot well over from outside the box. He had options inside and there was a little bit of frustration about it. 55 minutes, Virgil headed over from a Curtis corner and it was a ball that came all the way kind of across the box to him on the far side and he could dip and get his header on target. But, it was not powerful enough to worry the keeper. And then on 57 minutes, Pedro played in Sarr, whose centres to Hernandez, and he shot just wide of Ali's left post. But as Harry had said earlier on, there's every chance that gets pulled back. And Sarr is told, or we're all told, that Harry that he's offside, as Harry had said. But that doesn't stop it being replayed a million times, and them getting the benefit of the close run thing, because reasons. 58 minutes. Hernandez picks up a yellow for pulling back Joe Gomez, leads to a free on the right-hand side. And from that free on 59 minutes, Jota has a free header just over the top from a really good Henderson delivery, and credit where it's due. Often be picking up on Hendo doing the Hendo cross, which it can often be a bit of a blind, just dinked in thing. This was a nice delivery and good contact made by Jota, but it's over the top. And I'm going to finish on the 61-minute mark with you, where it's our man Jota again, just couldn't quite get there from another Hendo cross. This one was far more like the standard Jordan Henderson delivery in. And our man got there again, just sort of underlining. Everybody, by the way, in the commentary is talking all the time about how he's a little lad. He's not that small. But they seem to make out like he's a midget who's doing really well to get up in the air and challenge with these lads. He's just very, very good technically in the air. Talk to me about that opening sort of a chunk of that second half. And you see where I was going, what I said earlier on to Harry. It's not like maybe turning the screw in the most dramatic way possible, but we are certainly more authoritative and we are creating a bit more over the course of this second half.
Yeah, I think the halftime break sometimes as well gives managers more of an opportunity than we realise, how the coaches maybe just to get little things across, little tweaks, little changes, little bits of encouragement, little bits of admonishment, maybe if it's needed for some of the players on what they need to do better. They also know that maybe they're on borrowed time in terms of how many minutes they've got left in the game, because chances are they're 15 minutes away from being replaced by one of the other amazing names on the bench. So I think it does start to change things. But I think if you get looking at what's happening in this this spell of the game, it's just that just like little sense that there's always a danger from any team playing, no matter how well you're playing, that they're going to get a lucky break or something's going to work out for them. They're going to pull one back, and I think maybe we were starting to sense that ourselves as well, because you don't want to end a game like this where you've been in control so much and end up going out 1-1. So we started to create more of the chances, looking for the chances, and trying to take the chances. And I think what's interesting about Jota, maybe they're thinking he's not very tall, because to be fair to them, they've had Peter Crouch on duty with them today at BT Sports. Maybe those lads have just spent too much time next to Crouch, because just about anyone will look small after they've been spending time with him. So I'll give him that this time. But the truth is, they actually shared a stat about Jota, which maybe they're trying to make out it's remarkable because they're trying to make out that he's a short ass. But he's got the most headed goals in the Premier League this season, apparently. So I think he's 10 that he scored with the header, which, I mean, you'll have to take my word for that in whether I remembered it properly and whether they'd even got it right in the first place. But that says a lot about him. He's that kind of player. He can get up and get above defenders, and sometimes your height doesn't even matter that much anyway, because it's about getting your run right, getting your jump right, and of course having a great cross to actually work with as well, which is what he's had today. You're not going to score every time you try, no one is, but the fact that you keep trying means you're increasing your chances of doing so. And I think the more we're doing stuff like that, and the less we're doing the sort of long distance efforts that aren't going to go anywhere, the more we're going to win games. It was a game. We just continued what I said in the first half. Really, I was surprised Watford hadn't actually tried more to come out, but then you remember he's the manager and you think, I think his game plan, even when you're down, is to say we'll defend, we'll counter when we can, we'll hope for a set piece. And I think, in all honesty, the set pieces aren't going to be a good thing for Roy to score from, because he's not got his big lumbering plays that he would like to have, to sort of muscle around in set pieces in the box. So I think, yeah, the thing we talked about in the beginning of the game was continuing, but just that little bit more from Liverpool, maybe moving up a little bit in the gears, but not a great deal. And again, that bench they're waiting to come on and just make the difference, which inevitably it will.
You invoked the great man, the great broadsheet man, and Jimmy Pearce has put a few quotes. Jesus, listen to this. The only sour note for me, I find it hard to accept when a situation happens. Not one Liverpool player complained about being fouled. It leaves rather an unpleasant taste in the mouth, says Hodgson. He continues. The biggest myth in football, says Hodgie. Now, he's setting himself up here. This is controversial. The biggest myth in football is that refereeing decisions don't change games. The players were bemused he gave that penalty. Christ. Oh, yes. Yes, I'm sure they were bemused as to why a rugby tackle would result in a penalty.
I was going to say, had he actually seen the replay by this point? Because he's admitted he hadn't seen it when the VAR was being done. There are no big screens at Anfield, so there's no way he could have seen it unless one of his assistants got an iPad out. And you can't imagine Roy Hodgson's assistants having iPads. They've still got a BlackBerry that they can't work out why it doesn't work anymore. So, he won't have seen that penalty incident. It was a rugby tackle, which I'm sure we'll come to, but it's one of those. I mean, if you've got any complaints, it should be with your defender.
He's a one-off. Listen, he's providing a lovely little sideline of entertainment for us throughout this. What I'm going to do is talk about that goal with yourself and with Harry to finish off, but myself and Harry will take it to that point, which is effectively the end of the game anyway, because for the record, all that happens after the goal, the second goal goes in, is we bring on Milner in the 89th minute. They add 4 minutes. There is a Jota run where he slides in Sadio Mane really late in the game, but Foster got out to his feet. And of course, we did have the delight of the Liverpool top of the league chant, even if it didn't last that long. However, Harry, to build up to the point of the match where we can talk again about something particularly exciting, which is of course a goal and all the various incidents around it. We do kind of change things a little bit by bringing on Fabinho for Curtis. And like Jim said earlier on, you feel a little bit for the kid because it didn't quite happen for him, and obviously Fab is going to come on and look good because he just is the best at what he does. And anyway, it did start to have an effect because within a couple of minutes he was lofting a ball in, Mo was heading it over, Sadio Mane comes on then for Mo, who goes off looking less pissed off than usual, which I suppose might be a fair indication of a bit of self-awareness because he hadn't had a good afternoon. There was a lovely Alisson ball into Roberto Firmino's feet. Beautiful, like really brave, in pinged pass into feet, like a good half the pitch in length of a pass from the edge of the box. It led to a Liverpool corner. There was a really good direct run by Diogo Jota, who seems to have this ability to just sort of kick the ball ahead of him and get there and keep and hold off defenders. It never really looks silken, but it's incredibly effective. But it did, unfortunately, on 73 minutes come to nothing. 75 minutes, there was a really nice cutback by Joe Gomez and left foot clip ball into the penalty area. It travelled across to where it was intended to, which was Robbo. We've seen Trent do this a million times, but again, credit where it's due. Joe Gomez doing it beautifully there. Robbo's volleyed cross, he helped it on first time, went right into the danger area in the 6-yard box, but the keeper got there. they bring on a trio of substitutes, Cleverly, King and Dennis, for Pedro, Luza and Hernandez in 76 minutes. It has no impact. 78 minutes, there's a really good move where Sadio has a shot blocked, and again, lots of people pissed off at him because there were other opportunities. We saw a crazy Jordan Henderson ball across the back, which put us right in the bother for a few minutes, but it was recovered. A great chance on the break, completely ballsed up by a terrible Thiago pass, which, was atypical on the day, into Sadio Mane's feet. It was just really badly executed pass, which is so unusual for a lad who'd been pinging around world-class passes all afternoon. That was 83 minutes. And it's kind of at this point, Harry, where the tension's starting to build up because, I think it was Jim was saying it as well. You're starting to think it could be one of those where they get something back and then, it's obviously very, very it has a tremendous import, a draw as opposed to a win. But we get to the point now of this penalty incident. I'll bring in both of you, and I'll start with yourself. The way that it goes is that Arman Kuchet basically he's falling. He grabs onto Diogo Jota's waist. He's falling into him, leaning into him right there deliberately. He grabs him around the waist. It's a perfectly executed rugby tackle that we've seen a million times in that sport, and takes Diogo Jota out of it. So here's what I find remarkable about it. The decision is looked at by VAR. Now here's where I'm at a loss. Why can't they not just say, listen, Stuart Little, you've missed a clanger there. The most deliberate penalty, the most unquestionable decision ever. Point to the spot, please, there, Stuart. Cheers. But instead, they send him to toddle over to the monitor to see if his interpretation matches with theirs. How could it fucking differ?
Yeah, it seems to have changed this season where the VAR is even more deferential to the referee themselves, which doesn't really make sense because I think in those situations I don't understand why it's not fine. You've got a working relationship with somebody, and they just ping you on the pitch and say, oh, by the way, Stuart, you missed this. He rugby tackles him. It's a clear penalty. There's no need for you to come over and check it. It's a clear penalty. And you just give that decision. I understand when there's occasionally, marginal calls, more subjective calls, and they want to give the ref a chance to have a look at it. But in those instances, it's almost as stupid as that whole offside rule, right, where we just keep playing and asking people to sprint back and defend even though someone's miles offside. That seems to really annoy everybody, especially Virgil. So, yeah, I mean, we are not rookies here, Trev. I mean, I've spent years watching this art performed to distilled to an art form by Martin Skirtle and Dejan Lovren over the years. I know what it looks like, and so I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a clear penalty, and there was no bitter taste in my mouth, Trev. I was happily, looking forward to that penalty, wondering who was going to take it. There was nothing contentious about it, to be honest, was there?
No.
I was just glad that we had a chance to settle our nerves, and if anyone's going to step up and settle our nerves in this Liverpool squad, it was sort of fitting that it would be Fabinho, wouldn't it?
I think so completely. The guy is such a leader in this team. And Jim, just to bring you in on it, I saw Dave Hendricks saying of the dispatch, he said, I believe that's called the Van Dijk technique penalty, and he's right. It's just it was beautifully struck. And to be fair, rarely does Steve McManaman get stuff right, but he was talking about the variety of penalties that we've seen from Fabinho, and it's not like he's just got one thing that he does. He really does seem to just take each situation on its merits, and he's just battered that one into the top corner with fierce power because this was not a penalty to miss. You know what I mean?
Can you imagine how bitter the taste would have been, Trev, if he'd gone for the Panenka? Can you?
Oh my God, the taste in poor Roy's mouth. Veritable bile, I think. It's there's a lot to enjoy, as Harry said, Jim, in the execution of that penalty. The fact that it's the man himself doing it, because those kind of moments, it's not that he needs the confidence or anything like that, but they all build and they give a player more self-possession, and as he's such an important player for us, he can't have enough highlights in my opinion.
No. I mean, there was a lot of apart from the VAR, and obviously, how on earth the VAR spotted that. What an amazing technology we have that you can find such a microscopic, difficult to spot incident in a penalty area in the game. Yeah. I mean, I'm convinced that when this happened with Skirtle and stuff all the time, that I think there's almost like a lack of bravery from referees, that it's quite easy to say they didn't see it, that they didn't notice. It's part of the rough and tumble in the penalty area. I mean, we need to. The amount of times players are getting fouled in penalty areas at set pieces, it's unbelievable. And 9 times out of 10, if a foul's given, it's to the defending side, even though both sides are just as bad as each other at doing it. But this was as blatant as it comes. And of course, in a way, I was glad Mo had gone off, because it was one of those situations where you think if he'd still been on, he probably wouldn't have scored it. Would have just we could end up with a ruined Mo if we're not careful here. So it was good he'd gone. But then I did wonder, would he be able to bring Milner on to take it? Just for a moment, I thought, Milner's been our main penalty taker for a while, up until recently. When he was playing fairly regularly, he would take them. I was thinking, will he bring Milner on just to take the pen? I don't even know if you can. I know you can if you've had your goalkeeper sent off. You can bring his keeper on, but I don't know if they could. But who needs him? I actually feel more confident now, and I think Fab should actually be our main penalty taker now. Just quietly take the job off Mo, quietly take the job off Jimmy, make him our penalty taker, because as you say, he's got such a repertoire. He's scored 7 goals this season, but from the spot, I mean, I was thinking he's not going to do. You can't do the Panenka again. You cannot do that. The goalkeeper's got to be wise to that happening. And the penalty he took was a kind of penalty that it was textbook. You take one like that height, that much power. It doesn't matter if the goalkeeper dives the right way. He's probably not going to save it.
It's one of those ones where they say they could have had 2 keepers and they wouldn't save it, etc., etc. All those cliches, and they're there for a reason. Before I'm gonna finish with yourself in a minute, Jim, and come back to you to wrap the show up completely. I'm going to go to Harry for his final thoughts in a second, but just before we do, there is something that you touched on there, and it's going to be a talking point, so we might as well just touch on it with yourself there briefly. I think that's 10 games now that no goal from open play for Mo Salah. And you just mentioned the idea of how that a missed penalty there certainly wouldn't have been a good thing. Is it a reason for caution? I suppose it's really interesting because he's sitting clear, and it has been clear at the top of the Premier League scoring charts on 20 for quite a while now. And like I say, I think that's 10 games without a goal from play. Should Liverpool fans have any sort of anxiety about that? It's hard to look past the idea that the lad is just probably just he's been flat out for so long that it might actually be a great time for him to be able to step out for a game or two. It's just not an option that we can rest our best player. Are you concerned about it? I guess what I'm saying.
I'm not that concerned. No, I mean, I think as long as we handle it correctly, I think we know what he's got. We know what skill he's got. You don't lose that overnight. And why is he not scoring? Maybe in some cases he's just been up against players who know how to avoid letting him into those chances, because we've seen him do some amazing stuff. There's times when he doesn't need teammates almost because he does so much himself, but he does need teammates. And maybe at times he's just not getting quite the service he wants off them. Maybe it's just not quite gelling. It could be sort of the fact that he definitely had some kind of an injury at one point this season, which maybe he's not fully over. He's had, I mean, his head's going to be messed up with what's happened to him internationally, I'm sure. That sort of thing doesn't happen when you're as patriotic as he is and not have an impact on you. But, I mean, throughout my time as a Liverpool fan, we've had players who we practically think cannot do anything but score and then go on a run of, say, 9, 10, 11 games without scoring or very rarely scoring. And then the commentators will throw the stat out, like top scorer last season, but in the last 15, he's only scored 3. And all these stats happen, but then before you know it, those stats are forgotten more often than not. And I think that would be the case with Mo. I don't think he's gone off the boil. I mean, the situation with the contract won't be helping either, I'm sure. So I just think, I'm not worried, but maybe, maybe it's tempered some of those angry calls for FSG to give up the club and sell it to Roman Abramovich or whatever people were saying because they can't get a new contract for Salah. We've got to get him his contract, and he will come good again. And this is the thing. This is what we were saying a few months ago, though. All joking apart, we were almost on the verge of saying people's heads will need to roll if Mo doesn't get a new contract. So we're not, certainly not at the stage now where we think, oh, well, maybe we can let him go then. If that is the case, I actually have faith that Liverpool will know that's the case and he'll be let go quietly like we've done so many times in the past with players. But I just don't think we're there yet. I think, we just got to stay faithful, just sort of keep the faith with him, keep behind him, keep supporting him. Because the first time he scores a goal from open play, he'll probably score another one within 10 minutes.
I hope you're right. And I brought it up because I've seen one or two people whose opinions I respect. Actually, one fella actually just positing the notion that perhaps the contract was an issue, and that if he wasn't quite coasting, that maybe he just wasn't quite on it in the way that he would be mentally or whatever. So it's definitely going to be going around there as a topic of conversation. So worth bringing it up. I'll be back to you, Jim, in a minute for your final wrap up thoughts. And I'll get yours off you now, Harry. Overall, anything you want to go back to or pick up on that we've not really done in detail, or just your overall assessment of the performance. And then as you finish, do let folks know what's coming up for you during the week.
No, not particularly. I think it's. I often find it funny whenever there's sometimes these early kickoffs or these games at Anfield where like opposition fans come and chant, where's your famous atmosphere? And I actually thought the atmosphere was pretty good today, despite some of the anxiety towards the end. But I suppose the point is, there are many gears that we could go up. This was the first game back after a big international break where loads of players have been away playing quite important games for their countries. It was sort of as a little bit rusty as I expected, to be honest. And so I'm not left too disappointed by it. And I think with the defence how it is at the moment and how locked in everybody looks, I was never too worried that it was going to be anything other than a win. So yeah, it's those stats we mentioned at the start. 10 league wins on the spin, and 13 clean sheets in the last 18 in all comps. I mean, you can't really, stick up your nose at that. I think that's a really impressive return. And it's just you mentioned it as well. You look at the bench, and it's just I've never seen a bench that looks that strong for Liverpool. So the fact that we're going into this period, this month that's going to be so intense and so important for us with that quality of squad, with people now back, no international break in sight, and we can just get everybody properly rested and sort of rotated and back in again. That's really exciting. So yeah, I thought it was a nice run-of-the-mill win. Great to see us back on top of the league again, and hopefully, just big halftime team talk for Sean Dyche, of course. But I think it's great that we've managed to pull ourselves back into this position. Really, I think it really does warrant a lot of praise to get ourselves back to where we are right now and fighting neck and neck with City. And in terms of what's coming up for me next, I think I'll be joining yourself on Raw after the Benfica game midweek, and then also. Yeah, there's the rival recon coming up ahead of that small encounter over at the Etihad.
Yeah, it's just getting really boring at this stage, isn't it? A remarkable high intensity stuff coming up for all of us here, and do pay attention to whatever Harry's putting out. Always worth your time, and as he alludes to there, Dyche is going to have to pull even more than one finger out. Apparently, it's now 2-0, and that will mean City are back ahead on the top by a point. And you're correct. It's yourself, myself, and Carl will be on for Benfica during the week, and then I think you're making a hat trick, Harry, with the City game with Dave too. So look forward to those games and chatting to you then. And Jim, just get your final thoughts as well. Anything that you want to pick up on that we didn't really maybe emphasize, or just some general summary thoughts, and if you've got any podcasts or bits of writing or anything else on the go that you want to let people know about.
Yeah, I think one thing we do quite a lot on here, and I feel we need to do it, we kind of need to be that voice, is we kind of respond to hashtag LFC, the social media fan base, if you like, that, I don't mean everyone on social media, and people who are listening to this know the kind of people I mean. The ones who they seem to look for the negatives all the time, who seem to think the world's about to end. And, and it's very hashtag LFC to be thinking that after going top of the league, albeit for a short time, because maybe Sean Dyche maybe won't get that half-time talk right. But we went top of the league, we won. We've gone top of the league after people had written us off at Christmas because we'd lost a couple, we dropped points here and there. This is an excellent Liverpool team that are fighting for a title, fighting on four fronts as it goes, for this, as BT call it, unprecedented quadruple, which, isn't everyone in the unprecedented quadruple at some point in the season anyway?
Yeah.
So we're in, we're having an amazing time, and to come out of a 2-0 win with yourselves at the top of the table and to be thinking of anything negative really as your main takeaway from a game says a lot about the hashtag LFC element, if you like. I won't give them the real hashtag. Is it LFC family? I'm not sure. Anyway, the hashtag is FSG out, isn't it? But this side of being a Liverpool fan isn't what, this is the side you want. You want to see us winning. Yeah, you want to see us winning 6-0, but you know what? That pint will taste just as sweet after the match, whether it was a 2-0 or a 6-0. The papers will look just as good tomorrow if you look at the league table, if Sean Dyche does do that favour for us. But the thing is, in the end, as much as we're sort of, hoping that other people do us favours, we don't actually need anyone to do us a favour. If we carry on as we have done, winning, we've won the league. Now, obviously, there's that slightly bigger match to come that's going to decide it, really. We win that game against City, we've basically, it's in our hands to win the league. If it turns out it was just a step too far, the truth is, for the second season out of 3, we've really pushed them. I mean, one of the seasons, more than the second one. But so, how many out of the last 4 have we come close? We had a bad time because of COVID. Other than that, we've just been so close, and we're keeping it going. If it turns out Salah is on the decline, which I doubt, I feel that we've got a setup at this place that will make sure we don't feel any really bad ill effects from that, because we'll have people coming in to replace him. We're already seeing signs of that, as we've said today, as you two pointed out with Bobby. Jota's sort of making us prepare for the departure of Bobby in the best way possible by taking over from him in many ways and scoring the goals. It's good times. I'm enjoying it. We've got a cup semi-final. We've won a cup. We've got European matches ahead of us that are amazing to look forward to. It's a good time. And again, as you both mentioned, as we've said today, we've got a squad that can do it, because we've not just got Klopp's not just got problems picking which of his best 11 players to use for a given match, and which ones to rest because of the next match that might be coming up. He's got a problem, I think, now thinking which ones to stick on the bench as well. We've got that many good players. There are going to be players who are disappointed because they aren't even going to get into the matchday squad, because once everyone's fit, you cannot put all the good players into a matchday squad. We have that many, and that's something to be glad about. In terms of podcasts, well, I've had this weird non-COVID thing for the last couple of weeks, so I'm a bit behind, but I'm hoping it's on its way out, although I feel like I've been saying that for the last couple of weeks. In which case, as I've just shown, I can now talk without coughing, so that's a good sign. So maybe I'll get some podcasts sorted soon, because there's always something to talk about with this club, and at the moment, in my view, it's always positive, so let's keep it that way.
And you're right. You do have a couple of weeks, because you're right back in the thick of it in the second half of this month, this massive month of ours, where I see your feature with myself and Dave for Newcastle. You're going to be in for that Aston Villa game and Southampton too. So we look forward to chatting with you then, and whatever else you do in the meantime, Jim. I just want to finish up by saying thanks to Harry and thanks to Jim, and Harry's doubling up as producer today, so thanks to him for recording as well. Guy, no doubt, will edit it for us, so thanks in advance for that. Hopefully there's not too much work there for you, Guy. I think it's a straightforward one, that. We are coming at you thick and fast with Raw podcasts over the next while. That's the way we like it. Let's hope they're all wins to talk about, like the one today, or like any type of win. Let's not be too fussy. Once they're wins, we will be happy. And that means the Reds are doing what we want them to do, which is currently being very, very close to winning everything. Let's push them over that line and get all the 4 trophy Reds banners that we can absolutely hope to have. Get them all up all over the walls and be very, very happy with life. I'm looking forward to that potential anyway. Thanks to Jim. Thanks to Harry. I've been Trev Downey. We'll speak to you soon.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.